The way the Australian government has actually structured all of that is through a program called Skilled Migration Program. So you have a skill, which is on the demand list. Australian government publishes that list frequently, and it changes. It's a very dynamic list. There are 3 streams on that program. So we commonly refer them by number. It's 189, 190, and from the 16th November 2019. If you're watching this video before that time or after that, you should be aware of that. Now we have a new visa called 491. So 189 visa is called skilled independent visa. So you have a skill, you apply to migrate to Australia under that stream, and then you can choose to live anywhere in Australia you wish. There's no basically limitation. This visa provides pathway to citizenship in Australia. After arriving on this visa, based on today's laws, you will be required to stay in Australia for 4 years. After 4 years, you can apply for citizenship. The second stream that we have is called 190. This is a state-sponsored or state-nominated visa. So basically, a state will provide nomination for you. Why we have these separately is because you may have an occupation which is not immediately in demand Australia-wide. Some states, some cities in Australia may not, for example, need an accountant, but some other parts of Australia may have a shortage of accountants. So that state lobbies the Australian federal government to have the accountant appear on their list. And then if you're, for example, an accountant and you wish to migrate to Australia, you will be nominated specifically to go to that state. And then the state may consider you for a nomination, and as a result of that, you will get permanent resident visa, but you are expected to live for at least 2 years upon your arrival in Australia in that state. You can choose to live in any city within that state. That state also provides an additional 5 points. So in most instances where we have a client who may not reach the threshold points of 65 points, for example, we can get a state to nominate you to give you the additional 5 points, and then you reach the threshold that we require to get you to a visa. The third stream would be the 491 visa. In the past 2 years, there has been a lot of complaints made to the government, especially in Melbourne, where I live, and Sydney. So the state governments are complaining that we don't have the infrastructure to support the influx of new migrants. Our roads are congested, the traffic is building up, the resources that we have, public resources, are being stretched. Hospitals, schools, sometimes schools and childcare centers do not have capacity. I am aware of some of my clients have tried to enroll their children to a childcare center, for example, because they both want to work, and the childcare center says we do not have a place available until the next 6 months. So your child has to stay at home with you for the next 6 months before you can actually send your child to a childcare center. So this is all as a result of basically poor planning by the states in Australia, because they have allowed large number of people going to the state, and they have not been able to keep up to date with the number of people that are going to the state. To address this problem, the Australian federal government made a decision and announced that we will introduce a new visa. We had this a visa before, it's called subclass 489, previously in place. The 489 visa was basically abused, in my opinion, because people would have applied, granted the 489 visa, and it was a requirement that attached to the visa for these people to go and live in smaller cities in Australia. But all they needed was a way to get to Australia. Upon receiving that visa, they would have lived in metropolitan area and then improve upon their English or gain Australian work experience to go on a 189 visa or 190 visa. So there was no mechanism in place to stop certain people from traveling from small cities to larger cities. To address this problem, Australian federal government introduced a new visa, which is replacing the 489 visa. It's called 491. There is a requirement attached to that visa, and that requirement is that you need to live and work in a small city in Australia for a minimum 3 years before you can apply for permanent residency. While you're maintaining that visa, you cannot apply for basically a large number of visas, including 189, 190, partner visa or business visa, or employer-sponsored visas. The Australian government is trying to encourage all the newcomers to go and live in smaller cities. Australian government has anticipated that there's going to be a large number of people going to this regional area, to the smaller cities. Primary focus, in my opinion, is in the technology sector, software developers, network, security. As a result of that, you require additional services such as doctors, nurses, teachers, because the population in the smaller cities are going to grow and it's going to create a self-sufficient economy. Very common questions I get asked at the end of every consultation that I give. People tell me, do you think I should apply? Obviously you should. Australian Immigration Department is making it very difficult every year to migrate. I have been in this profession since 2008 and I have seen numerous changes. In 2008 it was very easy for basically anyone to migrate to Australia. Nowadays we have to only select the elite from the large cohort of people that coming to us and approaching us for a visa. So there's only a selected number of people that we can basically help. It's very important that you make quick decisions, especially with the 491 visa. A lot of people are capitalizing on this visa and would like to benefit from this visa, which leads into permanent residency after 3 years, 4 years. I should say that you should be quick in your decision making. We are in July when I'm recording this video. I would highly recommend that you do your skill assessment. The first stage of your visa would be a skill assessment, which is an authority in Australia determines whether your qualifications from overseas plus your work experience matches the Australian. This actually goes beyond overseas, it goes to Australia. If you graduated from an Australian university and you have Australian work experience, still has to be assessed. So the law is very uniform in that sense. I wish you all luck, and I wish to see all of you in our office very soon.